today I'm going to show you how to make a double exposure type image using Photoshop and Photopea. And I'm going to start in Photoshop. The thing that you want to do first is find the two images that you'd like to combine together. It seems to work really well if you find a picture of a portrait of a person, preferably not one that they're looking straight at the camera, and also a picture of an outdoor space, having something like cloud-like textures is really nice in the sky. Any trees or bushes is also really nice too for that effect that we're gonna get with the double exposure. So finding both of those and opening in the program of your choice. I'm then going to make sure that my portrait picture is completely black and white by going to Image, Adjustments, and down to the black and white option here. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. The next thing I'm going to do is bring over my other picture. So you can do this in a couple ways to make it easier for everybody. I'm going to select it with my Marquee tool and go to Edit, Copy, go back over to my other picture and go to Edit, Paste. Now when it's over here, I want to turn the opacity of my layer down, make sure I'm clicked on that layer I just brought over so that I can see where I'm actually placing it with my model. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I'm going to make it appear as if the clouds are merging into the background at the end, so I'm focusing on making sure that they're right there at the top of the head. All right, my next step here is going to be to hide the layer that I just brought over because I want to get rid of the background that he is currently on. So in that case, I am going to double click on this background layer to unlock it. It's going to turn it into layer 0. And I'm going to make a brand new layer underneath it, clicking on my new layer button and just rearranging those layers so that I have a background layer behind that layer. Now to delete the background on the layer of your model, you have a couple options here. If it works for you, the easiest option is going to be using your object selection tool. So depending on the contrast from the background, you can try that first. Dragging over the top of the model, and it should give you a very close edge. The other option is using your lasso tool, your magnetic lasso tool specifically, to be able to go around the edges and make any adjustments that you need to using your mask on your toolbar. Well, in this picture, it worked out perfectly, so I'm good to go with my selected image. And I'm also going to do a little trick that we haven't done before. I'm going to right-click on my picture itself and go to the option of Feather. This is going to allow us to have smoother edges when I cut it out. It's set to 5 pixels automatically. I'm going to change that down to 2, so it's a little less severe. And click OK. You're not going to see any difference right now, but it's going to make a huge difference when I actually cut that background out and remove it. So now I have him selected, but I don't have the background selected. So we know in that case, I need to go up to Select and Inverse, Select Opposite. And now using my keyboard, I can hit the Delete option and remove that background completely. All right. Now let's bring back the layer that we just hid. So click the little visibility option, the eyeball on that layer above, and make sure that that layer is now selected. And I can actually make a deselection right now. I can click on my Marquee tool and just click once anywhere in the screen. I don't need that selected anymore. And on this layer, I'm going to add a layer filter, a blending mode. So I'm going to drop down normal here and go down to the option of lighten. You can see that it starts to merge the picture and the background together. I also want to make sure that I'm going to add one of these colors from this picture to my background layer. So if you want to, you can bring your opacity back up or you can leave it down either way, but just so I can see what color options I have here, I'm going to bring it up to show you. Using my paintbrush tool, I'm going to hold down Alt Or Option if you're on a Mac, and click once to select the background. If you're on a Chromebook and that's not working for you, you can also go and grab the eyedropper tool and use it just separately here to click on the color that I want to use in my background. And on that bottommost layer, I'm going to use my paint bucket then and drop in that color. You can see that it went ahead and filled in everything that is behind him with that nice blue. All right, going back up to that layer 1, the layer with my mountain range, I'm now going to make some more adjustments. So I want to reselect him temporarily using my magic wand tool. I'm going to click the background behind him. And I want to add a layer mask to this layer. So on my layers palette, I'm going to click on the layer mask option. And I actually want to fill him with solid white. So using my paint bucket, I can click anywhere where I know he is, right there in the center. And it's going to fill that layer with solid white. And if I flip-flop that, I can then drop the solid black in the background and it will delete everything around the outside of him, making that nice mask. And if I drag that layer mask up to my layer right above it, now I'm left with just the inside of my mountain range and the outside of that blue texture in the background. We're getting close, guys. It already looks good. So the next thing I'm going to do now is adjust a little bit on this layer mask that I created. Using my brush tool, while it's set to black, I can go through and bring back his face. So I want to think about this of where I want his face to be and where I want the clouds and the background to be. Make sure your layer your brush is set to a low opacity, so somewhere between 30 and 40 is good. And I'm going to go back and just lightly go over the top of any important facial features. Think about those things we brought back when we were doing our basic portrait adjustment. So anywhere where you want to see those features, you can hover over. Just add a little bit back, still giving it that transparency look to the picture. Okay, now I can also do the exact opposite and flip-flop that so white is on top, and I can use this to then bring back the parts of the background that I want, like the clouds, to look like they're just slightly leaving the head space here, really merging those pictures together into the true double exposure. So you can go back and forth as you want and add or subtract, making those two pictures look like they flow. Also in this stage, if you're seeing that the background that you chose is not a good color for the part of the picture that you're letting seep into the background, you can always go back to that layer, use the eyedropper to grab another color from that same picture and drop it into the background. A final touch that's always a nice touch is going to the layer of the person, the model, and using your sharpening tool. Remember, it doesn't actually sharpen, but it can give that little bit of effect to bring attention to that area. Just slightly go over those important areas to crisp them up just a little bit. And there we have a double exposure. We're going to go to File and save it as a JPEG. Now that we've gone over the process in Photoshop, let's do the same thing in Photopea. You can see that I have both of my images open up at the top. Both have a separate tab up here. And I'm going to always start by making sure that the image of the model or whatever I'm bringing the picture onto is going to be completely black and white by going to Image Adjustments and down to Black and White. Very similar menu from Photoshop. Go ahead and click OK. And now I can bring over my other pictures. So using the Marquee tool, I can click and drag over the entire space and go up to Edit, Copy, and go to my other page and go to Edit, Paste. Give it a second to load. It is a very large file. Alright, and now I want to make sure that I can see through to my background, so I can turn the opacity of that layer down quite a bit. And using my move tool, I can drag and adjust it. If it wasn't the right size, I can always go to edit, transform, and scale to stretch it to where I want it to be. In this case, it works pretty well. I'm just looking for where the clouds are going to be exiting into the background space. When I'm done, I need to now do two things. One, delete the background behind him, and also make another layer that is going to hold the color of my entire background of my space. It doesn't matter which order you do these. I'll do it the same way we did last time, starting with making a brand new layer, dragging it underneath all of your other layers, and we want to add in a color for this background. So think about which space on your design is going to be flowing into that background space. In mine, it's going to be those clouds. So using my eyedropper tool, I can grab that color of blue that I want, and then I can, on that background layer, use my paint bucket tool to drop in that color blue. Even if I don't hide these layers, I can still see that I dropped it on the layer, but if you'd like to hide them just to see, you're welcome to do so. All right, now let's delete the background off of the guy. So in this case, we do need to hide the visibility of the layer right above just so we can see him. And you have a couple options here. You can use any of our selection tools. Let's use the magnetic lasso. And I'm going to start clicking around the outside edge. Give it a second. Again, it's a nice big file and it is online, so it might take a second for it to register. Take your time, go around the edge, make it as perfect as you want, but remember you can always go back and adjust just a little bit to make sure that it's perfect when you're completely done using your mask tool on your toolbar. Okay, so there's my selection, and again on my toolbar I can hit that mask option and use my eraser tool set to solid black and solid white to either add back to or take away my image, just like we've been doing, to make sure it's as perfect as I can possibly get it. Zoom in as close as you want to, Control plus, Control minus, or using the zoom tool, and make those edges really nice. Now I'm going to turn the mask off, make sure my selection tool, any of them are selected again, and now I can do what I did at least similarly and feather the edges. So up at the top of my screen I should see the feather option here. Let's change it to 2 pixels just like we did before. And I want to go to select inverse, so select opposite, and just go ahead and hit delete on your keyboard and you should be able to delete that background space out. Now that I have that background space deleted, I'm going to be able to bring back my layer above, and I can set that down to lighten as my option for my blending mode, so it blends it with that background layer. And I also want to make sure that I'm able to add a layer mask to that layer so that I can get rid of that background space on the outside. Now it should automatically, if you add the layer mask to that layer while the background is selected, to omit that background. If not, just double check that on this layer that the inside fill is white, the outside fill is black. You can also flip-flop that if you ever need to by clicking on the layer behind it, using your magic wand, again selecting the background, go back up to this layer mask, and then use your paint bucket to drop in either on the inside or the outside, depending on whether you need to fill it with black or white. But the inside of the head should be white, the outside of the face should be black, so that we are getting rid or masking out the rest of the background of that picture. All right, now I want to make sure I no longer have a selection, so I'm going to use my Marquee tool to just click once anywhere on my screen. And using my brush tool set to a lower opacity, let's go down to between 30 and 40 like we did last time. And make sure it's a nice fuzzy brush, so turning my hardness down. I'm gonna go ahead and grab black where I want to add back any of my facial features. So I'm taking away that picture of the layer mask right here. So thinking again, the important details that we really enhanced on the portrait editing project that we did. So eyes, the under the nose, the eyebrows, any hair if you want to keep any hair. So bringing back any of those features that you want. And then the exact opposite. If I want, let's say, the sky to travel out into this background space like we did, I'm going to flip-flop that so white is on top now. And I can go through and add back any of those clouds. Make my brush a little bigger up here. And I'm actually going to turn the opacity up for this part so it goes a little bit quicker. Okay, I'm also going to go back to my original picture, so clicking on that first part of the layer and turn the opacity of that image back up so that I can see through just a little bit. No, actually for this picture, I like it back up to 100%. I can just adjust and add in or take away anything that I want to, because I really want that head to fade out to the sky, and it just wasn't doing it the same way. Okay, and there we have our double exposure, same as our last program. If you wanted to, you can go back with that last step, using the sharpening tool here, make sure you're on the layer of your portrait, and just touching those facial features that you really want to pop.